Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mio1MA podcast, breaking down another UFC Apex card, and this one is not good. This one, so listen, there's some good fights on here. I'm looking forward to Steve Erceg versus Ode Osborne. I'm looking forward to Yasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill. That's fine. I think Andre Fili versus Christian Rodriguez it's a bit of an odd use of both men. But it's still a reasonably good fight, and Miles Johns versus Jan Matsumoto is an under the radar banger. So I think like that four block, the second fight in the main card up to the co-main event, here for it, ready to roll, let's go. But the main event is not a UFC main event. Eric Anders versus Christian Leroy Duncan is wonky, and the undercard, basically everything below the main card, garbage. Doesn't even feel like UFC level fights like all the way through. There are UFC level fighters. Elijah Smith is a guy I have a fair amount of hope for. Gabriela Fernandez is a fighter I have a fair amount of hope for. But they're fighting Toshio Kazama, maybe the worst bantamweight in the UFC, and Julia Stoliarenko, who is this one-hit wonder trick grappler, and that is all. So I don't even know how much I can really give you in terms of technical breakdown of several of these fights. And as far as betting odds are concerned, and interspiel here, do not bet more than you can afford to lose. MMA is a chaotic betting environment, and random stuff does happen. Quite frequently, quite a lot. It is the nature of the sport. So you have that. But you have like very, very wide odds on a lot of these fights. Like, there are, let's see here, I consider about minus 300 to be like where you're getting into like one-sided beatdown territory. And for that, you have Hernandez is favored at that level. Erceg is favored at that level. Matsumoto is favored at that level. Christian Leroy Duncan is humongously favored. Julius Walker, horrendously favored. Elijah Smith, same thing. Jocelyn Edwards. Eros Medic. Gabriel Fernandez. So that basically leaves in terms of like even interesting on the betting odds fights. The only ones are like Hill versus Lucindo, Fili versus Rodriguez, and Brundage versus McConaughey. And that's basically kind of it. So it is about as bad as any UFC fight card could be. Now, could it surprise? Could it do good things? Yeah, sure. There's always the chance of a amazing fight that you're not looking forward to. The key example I always use is Zach Cummins versus Ed Herman, a battle of two fighters I wasn't super interested in, who were fighting their respective retirement fights, and they went out there and they balled in a way that like at no other point in their career would Ed Herman versus Zach Cummins have been an interesting fight. So there could be some random stuff here. It's a card that's really struggling. Like even compared to last week's card, which I did call bad, but it was bad in a way that like guaranteed action. This one doesn't even have that. It's not just that the fights are unimpressively matched. It's that they're not necessarily even good excitement, entertainment providers in their matchups. But anyways, let's get to it. Let's get cracking. Let's get doing it. Anthony Hernandez versus Rome Dolidze, the fight that I have by far the most notes for, but realistically it kind of boils down to the following. Anthony Hernandez is not a physically overwhelming fighter, but he does have a game plan and a lot of pressure. He'll bring the pressure with his striking. He'll bring the pressure with his wrestling. He will wear you down. He has himself amazing cardio. And as a result, he tends to be able to push the action on people who are more physically imposing, more physically potent than him, and still manage to get wins. The Michel Pereira fight is probably the best example of this. At no point during that fight do you get the feeling that Anthony Hernandez is in any way athletically matched to Pereira, but he manages to stop him. He also did this to Roman Kopylov, to Brendan Allen twice, Edmund Shabazian, Marc-Andre Barrio, and then Josh Fremd and Rodolfo Vieira before that. Vieira just kind of gassed out, and Fremd is, well, he's Fremd. But, his only losses are to Kevin Holland via, very sudden knockout and ground and pound, and a submission loss to Marcus Perez, who is a name that I think probably is lost to time for us, but was a guy who, if he had, weaponized his grappling talents in a much, much better way, because he was that like grappling guy who really, 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 really wanted to be like a kung fu guy. And as a result, like he had no way of getting to his best stuff. But if you tried to input a grappling game on him, if you tried to make it into a grappling game, he would often, actually have a lot of success. And that's what Hernandez did. So as far as this fight is concerned, he's up against Roman Dolidze, who is the complete opposite, if that is possible, in the sense that Dolidze has all the physical tools that you would want in terms of strength, power, size. He's 6'2". He looks like a 205er when he fights at 205. That's how big he is. His 205 fights are like always like, how does this guy make middleweight? But he does it apparently quite fine. And that's all I'm going to say about that particular portion. And he is a dangerous grappler by his own right. He loves 50-50 leg play. Loves going for leg locks. He's very, very strong. But he is also like very uncoordinated, inefficient with his striking, and that leads to him gassing out quite a bit. So I'm going to go with Hernandez to have problems early, because he always does, because again, it's not like he has a super refined, super good game. He's defensively there to get hit very hard. But at the end of the day, Dolidze is going to want to clinch with him anyways, in all likelihood, and that means that he's going to play Hernandez's game. And Fluffy should be able to abuse that, take him down, use the inefficiency that I just talked about to get Dolidze tired, and take this fight over later on. Could he get knocked out? Absolutely. Could he get submitted? Absolutely. This is going to be very, very dangerous early. I expect to, in the first round, multiple times, question this pick. But it's a 5-round fight. If he can survive the first round, if he can survive maybe even the first half of the second round, that's when the crossover should start to come. That's when Dolidze should start to get tired, and the fact that Hernandez has a game and a gas tank will slowly start to break him apart into a very controllable grappling mess. There still might be some moments, because like Dolidze gets tired, but like he doesn't stop trying. He's not this type of guy who shuts down when he gets tired. It's just that the effectiveness of his game goes down and down and down. He's not capable of being quite as active as he initially was, and he's obviously not a guy who has technique to fall back upon in any way, shape, or form. So Anthony Hernandez, Fluffy by submission, is the pick. He is the plus 240 to plus 270 on Dolidze, minus 300 to minus 360 on Hernandez. I was reading out the wrong side of the odds there. Steve Erceg versus Ode Osborne at a 135-pound fight, because this is a super, super late booking. It was supposed to be Hungham Park versus Steve Erceg at 125. So they brought Osborne in here very, very late. And the main interest here in this fight is that Osborne's two biggest issues have historically been his gas tank and his durability. They're both massive question marks for him. He gets tired. He tends to get hit quite hard, even by guys who are not known as hitters at 125. Doesn't necessarily get knocked out, so he recovers and he keeps going. But there's a lot of fights where he just gets hurt in a way that suggests just too much weight cutting. So if your biggest issues are cardio and durability, and you're cutting 10 pounds less, maybe that'll fix some things for him. I don't know. But I can't assume that will fix things. So I'm going to approach this as if he is still the same guy, which is a very fast, very athletic fighter. He's big, 5'7", 73 inches of reach at 125 is quite large. And he has good offensive wrestling and dynamic striking. He's very dangerous moment to moment to moment. Erceg is a far more complete striker, in the sense that while there is a significant problem with him defensively in deeper combinations and exchanges, he is a good technical striker. Like, his boxing is well put together. It's very good offensively. It's just, when he's on the back foot, his defense breaks down, and like his defense also breaks down a little bit during exchanges. He's also a good wrestler, a good scrambler. Man, probably more than anyone else, maybe, except for Moreno, managed to shut down a great amount of like Pantoja's grappling game And he's fantastic in that regard. And Osborne is very takedownable. Like, dude gives up double underhooks pretty consistently in the clinch, gets taken down, gets body locked. And I assume Erceg will have that as a security blanket if things are not going well on the feet. Now, there is a question mark here that should not be a question mark, but this is MMA, so it is. Osborne fights predominantly, if not entirely, as a southpaw. And a lot of Erceg's striking, as a boxing-centric guy comes off of the jab. Historically, we have seen this MMA issue, and it's an issue in boxing too, but it's a bigger issue in MMA than it is in any other combat sport. Is fighters having a very hard time figuring out how to utilize confidently their jab against a southpaw. So, assuming Erceg is bringing southpaws in, I hope he is, and assuming Erceg is still going to jab, I have to take it. Then again, and there's also, like I said, the safety net of his grappling and his wrestling advantages over Osborne, and that's why I have him as a TK or a submission victory here. Probably hurting him in the feet and then like getting like a club and sub type deal thing. But that's my thought. So I'm going with Erceg, riding with him, and the only question mark here is, of course, he's coming off 3 straight losses to very, very good fighters. Obviously, it's Pantoja, Moreno, and Kai Kara-France. So there's no shame in losing to those, but it does kind of like bring up the point of like, where is Erceg's confidence and where is Erceg's willingness to throw down right this second? That could be the only real problem. But I have him by submission. Osborne is dangerous, but he is not without significant flaws that Erceg can exploit. So Erceg by submission, he's the favorite, minus 480 to minus 600. Osborne plus 330 to plus 430. If you were going to bet on this fight, I'd honestly be tempted to take the dog Osborne. I'm just saying it. That is a very, very, very big divide for a fighter coming off of 3 straight losses. Yasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill. Lucindo minus 185 to minus 200. Hill plus 146 to plus 163. I am going to take the dog here. I'm going to take Angela Hill because, yes, she is 40 years old. Yes, she is somebody who has been athletically bullied by other fighters in the past. Yes, she is a fighter with very few ways to cleanly and like ultimately win a fight. Like realistically, her career is absolutely wrecked by a number of split decisions. This is a woman who has gone to split decision with Ketlin Souza. This is a woman that has gone to split decision with Amanda Lemos. This is a woman who has gone to split decision with Michelle Waterson Gomez, with Claudia Gadelia. Like, she is Mrs. Split Decision. Courtney Casey, there's a name from the past. And not always won them, to be clear. Like, the record in those splits is actually pretty bad. So there is absolutely a chance that Yasmin Lucindo could get this job done. But like, I feel like Lucindo's career has kind of hit a problem. So she came in and debuted against Yasmin Hauergui, and that was a great fight, but it was one that she lost. And it's a loss that I don't think is aging all that well. And then beat Brogan Walker and Polyana Viana. But then her 2 big wins are like Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Marina Rodriguez in fights where they were both definitively on the way down. And what this has kind of shown to me rewatching these fights is that Lucindo doesn't really have a way of channeling a fight. She doesn't really have a way of not doing everything. Obviously, she can have quick finishes and stuff like that. But in a long fight, which I'm presuming we're going to have here because she's not a massive hitter, she's not a submission genius, is that she kind of has to do everything over the course of the fight. She doesn't have really a way of saying no. And that's got her into trouble and obviously cost her the loss to Lemos, but it also cost her problems with Karolina Kowalkiewicz for parts of that fight and gave her a surprisingly competitive split decision fight with Marina Rodriguez, who is a ghost at this point. Like 2024 Marina Rodriguez is coming off of a very competitive fight with Jessica Andrade, but then goes on to just get absolutely crushed by Jillian Robertson. She's not good. And that makes me wonder. So will I be surprised if Lucindo just ends up being too fast, being 18 years younger than Angela Hill? No, absolutely not. I would not be surprised if she actually just even blew Angela Hill out of the water here. But she doesn't have a performance where she has had success in the clinch that would lead me to believe that she can fight Hill there. And like I said, she doesn't really have a game that says no to fighting there. And she doesn't even really have necessarily the greatest range game either. So I'm just taking the veteran savvy. I'm taking the woman who, despite being 40 years old, seems to be not necessarily getting better every time out, but like still making improvements. It's kind of defying time. And I'm taking her here again. Might be the last time, but we'll see. So then we have Andre Fili versus Christian Rodriguez. Christian Rodriguez is the favorite here, minus 225 to minus 265. And I'm picking an underdog again, Andre Fili, plus 185 to plus 205. I'm on that train because Rodriguez has had a great UFC run, obviously, beating Austin Bashi, Raul Rosas Jr., Cameron Simon, Isaac Dolgarian. I was blanking on his name there for a second. Guys who are very big prospects that he dragged into deep water and just drowned them, basically. Yes, you can wrestle with me. Yeah, you're going to have some success, but I'm going to still be here. I'm going to be still counter wrestling. I'm going to still making it hard for you, and you're not ready for that. And eventually that caused them to break. Not so much Simon. Simon was more of a different vibe, but still a fight where Simon more or less blew himself up. Fili is not going to blow himself up. Fili has problems. He's not as durable as he used to be. That submission loss to Melchior Costa was really bad, but he is a guy that you need to make pay with a big moment to really put behind the 8 ball. And that's not what Rodriguez does. Rodriguez does not have dynamic lethality. He does not have dynamic danger factors. He's a guy who breaks you down with a deep technical ocean and causes you to self-destruct. Fili doesn't do that. Fili doesn't have to just wrestle. Fili doesn't have to, Fili is going to be a guy who has a size advantage, a range advantage, a height advantage, the ability to land some strikes to actually be the guy who did out-kickbox Cub Swanson. So I get the odds. I understand that Rodriguez is kind of on a bit of a hot streak. Well, not really at this moment, but in terms of recent performances, Rodriguez is on a bit of a hot streak. He did beat Austin Bashi in this year already, and then back in 2024, he had the wins over Dolgarian and Simon. He had that run, and the losses to Julian Erosa and Melchior Costa in the meantime are there as well. But Fili has been having some awkward performances lately, and his wins are over old guys. Looking at Cub Swanson, looking at Lucas Almeida, looking at Bill Algeo. And in the meantime, there's like very determinative losses to Joe Anderson Brito, to Dan Ige, to Melchior Costa, Nathaniel Wood, to a certain degree. But like Wood is about the only one of those that has any similarities with Rodriguez. And I think Wood is a much, 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 much better version of what Rodriguez is trying to serve up. He doesn't have the knockout power of a Dan Ige. He doesn't have the dynamic transitional grappling of a Melchior Costa. He doesn't have anything that's represented by Joe Anderson Brito. It's just not the style of fight that Fili loses, and it's not the style of fight Rodriguez wins. So I'm going to go with Fili by decision. Miles Johns versus Gene Matsumoto. I think it's Gene. Minus 300 to minus 350 on Matsumoto, plus 240 to plus 255 on Johns. Taking Matsumoto. This is kind of a mirror matchup. They're both guys who are most comfortable being power punchers in the pocket, coming forward like power, little wrecking balls, and doing their thing. And it's just, we haven't seen Matsumoto discouraged from that at any point. His only loss is, for one thing, very questionable to Rob Font, but it's Rob Font doing a thing that Miles Johns is not going to do. He's not suited to do it. He's not got the skill set to do it. So, having seen Miles Johns have a relatively competitive fight with Dan Argueta, having seen John Matsumoto have a relatively competitive fight to Dan Argueta, I think we're looking at something very similar to that fight. And I just think that Matsumoto, maybe it's just that we haven't seen him hit that wall, and we've seen Miles Johns hit that wall, but Matsumoto works at a superior pace. I think he's just a better version of what Miles Johns is. Honestly, I think he's got more of a counter game. He's got more clean striking form. He's got, I don't want to say better wrestling, because Johns might be the better wrestler of the two, but he's got a more in-tuned wrestling game to his striking than Johns does. So Matsumoto by decision. I'm looking forward to that fight. That should be a banger. It should be very, very violent and fun. Erceg versus Christian Leroy Duncan. Listen, I'm not a big fan of CLD, and I'm not a fan of him being minus 500 to minus 620 here. Anders is plus 380 to plus 400, but it does have to be said that Erceg style is not particularly complicated. It's very much a punch into the clinch and try to be like kind of physical and muscle people around and control the fight from there. And it's worked to beat 2024 Chris Weidman and then like Jamie Pickett and Kyle Daukaus, whose like face was destroyed already. But it hasn't really worked on anybody else. It hasn't worked on anybody else that's anyone who's just not shot. And Christian Leroy Duncan, yes, his style is a lot of flash and not a lot of structure. Like the connective tissue is just missing from his, but he's capable of doing very, very cool things at range. He's capable of doing some cool things in the clinch. There's some highlight reel stuff for him, and he is a big, good athlete. 6'2", 79-inch reach at 185. But I do think that the hopes for what Christian Leroy Duncan was going to be, because people were very, very high on this guy coming in, probably will never happen. But it will be more than enough here to win the range battle with Anders, because Anders doesn't really have a range game, so to speak. And in the clinch, CLD is pretty strong. And I mean, we've seen guys like Marc-Andre Barrio be able to defeat Anders in the clinch, and even Jungkook Park. So CLD by decision could be a fun fight, could also just be a complete grind. Julius Walker versus Rafael Sequeira. I have no time for this fight. I'm not going to do much with it. Walker is a prohibitive favorite at minus 625 to minus 700. Sequeira plus 400 to plus 475. Basically, this boils down to the fact that Sequeira is not a fighter. He is a bully. He goes out there, he throws a hard strike, and if you come back at him, he kind of folds. And as far as we can tell, Walker is not intimidated by just getting hit once by a hard strike. He had a competitive fight with Alonzo Menifield. I don't think he belongs in the UFC, but you know what? He's got the fighter spirit. He's got some level of development going on. He is the pick by TKO. Elijah Smith versus Toshio Kazama. This is set up for a win for Elijah Smith. Elijah Smith is minus 649 to minus 835. Kazama is plus 450 to plus 575. Kazama is not very good. He has no real striking game to speak of. He is fragile. He is hittable. And he's not very athletic. He's just like he's kind of this weird sort of catch wrestling grappler type of deal where like he does have some interesting submission setups and he's dangerous from positions you wouldn't really expect him to be, but it's not really paired to a strong takedown game really at all. Smith is a very raw fighter. He's 22 years old. Is what it is, but he's a big, strong bantamweight. He is a good wrestler. He is a good athlete in all ways. He's explosive, fast, and strong. And he hits hard. And he grapples pretty well. So I'm going to go with Smith by TKO. Kazama could catch him in something, I guess. But there's very, very few people that you pick that to actually work with. Jocelyn Edwards versus Priscilla Cachoeira. This is another garbage fight. It is minus 345 to minus 380 on Edwards, who is a very flawed fighter, but is a strong single strike technical striker who does have a reasonable clinch wrestling game, but also cannot stay out of the clinch. And her combinations kind of break down really badly. And on the ground, she's the only person I've seen have 9+ minutes of top control, or almost 9 minutes of top control against Nora Cornole, and do basically nothing with it to the point where no one really had a problem with Cornole winning decision. That's not good. That's quite bad. But she's going up against Priscilla Cachoeira, who's plus 255 to plus 300 for a reason. She is a hard hitter and a strong fighter, but that is about it. She panics. She has no technical game anywhere. She will foul when she panics quite heavily. She's tried to eye gouge. She's tried to pull hair. She'll grab the cage. Anything you can think of in terms of foul, she will do. And I'm not picking her. She could knock out Edwards, but Edwards is reasonably durable and has some idea of how to defend herself. So, yeah, it's just moderate. To be honest, the moderate and amazing thing about Cachoeira is that after debuting in the UFC and getting a historical beatdown for Valentina Shevchenko and losing her first 3 fights, should be mentioned, she has somehow turned that into a 7-year parlay to actually be in the UFC. And I'm confused because there's been so many like bad moments with her trying to like eye gouge Jillian Robertson and like other things. It's amazing she's still here. Uros Medic versus Gilbert Urbina. Medic is minus 430 to minus 455, plus 320 to plus 350 for Urbina. I am taking Medic, which is saying something because I don't think I picked him since he fought Elon Cruz in his debut. Which doesn't mean that I've been right, obviously. He's 4-3 in the UFC, so obviously I've been wrong 3 times. He's a bad wrestler. He's undersized for the division, probably fits more like 165, but he is a violent striker with a lot of power, and Urbina is just terrible defensively and a glass cannon. He's not durable. He's not good. His entire defense consists of being 6'3" and having a 75-inch reach. And he's going to be 2 inches taller here, and he's going to have 4 inches of reach on Medic, but I assume Medic will find his way at least inside enough to hit him and put him away and do his thing. But there is a chance that with Medic's bad wrestling that Urbina just kind of big brothers him and picks up a decision that way. But like it's also possible that he big brothers him for like a round and then gets knocked out in the second. So it's not a good fight. Gabriel Fernandez versus Julia Stolyarenko. Fernandez is minus 400 to minus 480. Stolyarenko is plus 300 to plus 350. I'm not going to pick Stolyarenko because she's just an armbar machine. She clinches up. She doesn't have a very good takedown game from there necessarily. She's just kind of big, strong, and really was pretty at home at bantamweight. I'm really not sure why she's done the flyweight transition. It's worked out somewhat for her, I guess, but it feels like unnecessary weight cutting. And she's going to try and clinch, and she's going to try and armbar Fernandez, and that's about it. Fernandez has some actual like range tools as a striker. She is a strong girl. She is a solid grappler in her own right. I want to say probably has never been submitted. Let me see here. Not that matters. Stolyarenko has submitted many girls who, decision losses to Bleda and Jasudavicius and Maria Silva back in the day. She does have some grappling issues as far as wrestling is concerned, so there is a chance that maybe this just ends up in the clinch over and over again, and Stolyarenko actually does take her down. It's on the table, but I'm going to take Fernandez by decision. So there you go. It should not work. I hope it does not work. Cody Brunridge versus Eric McConaughey. Listen, I'd be more interested in McConaughey if he wasn't 35 years old because he's got the physical tools to be like a decent middleweight. They're fighting at 205 for this one, though. Brunridge we've seen actually win UFC level fights. We haven't seen McConaughey do the same. Brunridge by TKO. But I'm kind of cheering for... I don't even know. Am I cheering for McConaughey? I don't know. If I'm betting on this fight, by the way, I'm picking McConaughey at underdog odds because I am never betting on Cody Brunridge as a favorite. Ever. That guy's fights are... To be honest, I wouldn't bet on his fights. Like, Cody Brunridge's run in the UFC has got to be the weirdest in all of history because he's got a draw with Mansour Abdul Malik, although the result apparently was overturned. He's got a no contest with Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He's got a win over Jacob Malkoun for illegal elbows to the back of the head. Like it is just so very bizarre. His career, like almost every fight you watch of his, it's just yeah. Outside of the Nick Maximoff fight, like that's really just kind of like very bog standard, but like everything else is chaotic and messy and destructive. So I don't know. I just stay away from betting on this fight. If you're gonna bet on it, bet on the underdog. But I would just stay away from it in general. So there's your fight card. Hopefully it delivers more than I'm expecting. Expectations are very low. I'm not going to be watching it live, but I will be watching it on tape delay. Check out down below for the links to my video gaming stuff, social medias, and all that jazz, including the Discord server where we do simulated mixed martial arts, violence, and I think if you've watched this for 30 minutes or however long it ends up being, you would probably enjoy that. Have a good day. Enjoy the fights the best you can. Maybe go outside and touch grass instead, though.